There's a certain kind of horror that doesn't come from ghosts or monsters, but from the people who walk among us, smiling, welcoming, and promising answers to life's hardest questions. Cults don't always look like the movies. Sometimes they look like a friend, a mentor, or a group that just wants to help. But behind the kindness, there's a darkness that can swallow you whole. Tonight, I'm sharing 3 true stories of people who survived cult recruitment attempts. Stories that prove the scariest traps are the ones you never see coming. The first story begins with a college freshman named Olivia. She was new in town, far from home, and feeling the weight of loneliness that comes with starting over. One afternoon, as she sat alone in the campus cafe, a group of students approached her. They were friendly, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in getting to know her. They invited her to a study group that met off campus, promising free food and a chance to make new friends. Olivia, eager for connection, agreed. The first meeting was harmless enough: pizza, laughter, and a few icebreaker games. But as the weeks went on, the group's focus shifted. The conversations became more intense, centered around a charismatic leader named Daniel. He spoke about finding purpose, about unlocking hidden potential, and about the emptiness of the outside world. Olivia noticed that the group members hung on his every word, repeating his phrases and encouraging her to do the same. Soon, the meetings became more frequent and the pressure to attend grew. If Olivia missed a session, she'd get dozens of texts asking where she was, telling her she was missed and needed. Daniel began assigning homework, journaling about her fears, confessing her secrets, and sharing her doubts with the group. Olivia felt herself being pulled in, her world shrinking to the size of the group. She stopped calling her family, stopped seeing her old friends, and started to believe that Daniel had the answers she'd been searching for. But one night, after a particularly emotional meeting, Olivia's roommate found her crying in their dorm room. She listened as Olivia described the group, the pressure, and the way she felt trapped. The roommate recognized the warning signs. Her own cousin had been recruited by a cult years before. She convinced Olivia to skip the next meeting and come with her to the campus counseling center. There, Olivia learned about cult tactics, love bombing, isolation, and manipulation. With the help of a counselor, she cut ties with the group, blocked their numbers, and started rebuilding her life. It wasn't easy. The group tried to lure her back, sending messages about how she was lost and betraying the family. But Olivia held firm, and over time, the group moved on to new targets. She never forgot how close she came to losing herself, and now she volunteers with organizations that help others escape similar traps. The second story is about a man named Marcus, who was recruited while searching for meaning after a painful breakup. He was vulnerable, questioning everything, and desperate for a sense of belonging. One day, he stumbled across a self-help seminar advertised online. The event promised to change your life and unlock your true potential. Marcus signed up, thinking it would be a harmless way to get out of the house. The seminar was held in a hotel ballroom, filled with upbeat music, motivational speeches, and a crowd of people who seemed genuinely happy. The leader, a woman named Celeste, was magnetic. Her energy filled the room, and her words seemed to speak directly to Marcus's pain. She talked about transcending limitations, breaking free from toxic patterns, and joining a community of like-minded souls. By the end of the weekend, Marcus felt transformed. He signed up for the next level, a retreat in the mountains, promising deeper healing and connection. At the retreat, things took a darker turn. The group was cut off from the outside world. No phones, no internet, no contact with family or friends. The days were filled with intense workshops, emotional confessions, and group exercises designed to break down personal boundaries. Celeste encouraged members to share their deepest secrets, to purge negativity, and to trust only the group. Marcus began to feel uneasy, but every time he voiced a concern, he was told he was resisting growth or afraid of his own power. On the third night, Marcus overheard a conversation between two senior members. They talked about recruitment quotas, financial commitments, and discipline for those who tried to leave. The language was cold, businesslike, and nothing like the loving community he'd been promised. That night, Marcus packed his bag and tried to leave, but was stopped by a group member who insisted he wasn't ready and needed one more session. Marcus pushed past him, found his way to the road, and hitchhiked to the nearest town. He called his sister, who drove hours to pick him up. Back home, Marcus struggled with guilt and confusion. He'd been so sure he'd found his place, only to realize he'd been manipulated and used. He spent months in therapy, learning to trust himself again. Furthermore, he now speaks out about cult tactics, warning others to be wary of groups that demand total loyalty, isolate you from loved ones, or make you feel guilty for asking questions. The third story is perhaps the most unsettling. It comes from a woman named Priya, who was recruited by a group that presented itself as a spiritual community. Priya was drawn in by their message of peace, meditation, and self-discovery. The group met in a beautiful house on the edge of town, filled with candles, soft music, and people who seemed genuinely happy. The leader, known as Mother, was gentle and wise, offering guidance and comfort to anyone who needed it. At first, Priya felt at home. She attended meditation sessions, shared meals with the group, and felt her anxiety melt away. But as time went on, the group's teachings became more rigid. Members were expected to follow strict rules: no contact with outsiders, no questioning Mother's authority, and no leaving without permission. Priya was assigned a mentor who monitored her every move, reporting back to Mother if she broke any rules. One night, Priya confided in another member that she missed her family and wanted to visit them. The next day, she was called before Mother, who accused her of betraying the community and inviting negative energy. Priya was told she needed to atone by fasting and isolating herself from the group. The punishment left her weak and frightened, but it also gave her time to think. She realized she was trapped and that the group's love was conditional, given only when she obeyed. Priya waited until the house was quiet, then slipped out a back door and ran for miles until she reached a gas station. She called her brother, who came to get her. Priya spent months recovering, haunted by nightmares and the fear that the group would come looking for her. She eventually found support in a survivors group, where she learned that her experience was far from unique. These stories are more than just warnings. They're proof that anyone can be vulnerable and that the most dangerous traps are the ones disguised as love, friendship, or enlightenment. If you think it could never happen to you, remember that every person in these stories thought the same thing. The scariest monsters aren't always strangers in the dark. Sometimes, they're the people who promise to save you. For Olivia, Marcus, and Priya, escaping a cult wasn't just about running away. It was about reclaiming their sense of self, their trust in others, and their ability to believe in their own instincts again. The aftermath of cult recruitment is a different kind of trauma, one that lingers in the quiet moments, in the way you second-guess every new relationship, every offer of help, every group that promises belonging. But their stories are also about survival, resilience, and the power of saying no, even when it feels impossible. Olivia's journey back to herself was slow and painful. After cutting ties with Daniel's group, she found herself haunted by guilt and confusion. She missed the sense of community, the feeling of being needed, and the certainty that came from following someone else's rules. But she also remembered the pressure, the the manipulation, and the way her world had shrunk to the size of a single room. With the help of her roommate and a campus counselor, Olivia started to rebuild her life. She reconnected with her family, reached out to old friends, and joined clubs that had nothing to do with self-improvement or secret meetings. She learned to spot the red flags: love bombing, isolation, and the demand for total loyalty. Over time, Olivia found her voice again, and she used it to help others. She volunteered with organizations that educate students about cult tactics, sharing her story so that others might recognize the warning signs before it's too late. That Marcus's recovery was a battle with shame and self-doubt. He couldn't believe he'd fallen for Celeste's promises, that he'd handed over his secrets, his money, and his trust to a group that saw him as nothing more than a number. The hardest part was forgiving himself that he spent months in therapy, working through the layers of manipulation and emotional abuse. He learned that cults prey on vulnerability, that they use hope as bait, and that anyone, no matter how smart or skeptical, can be caught off guard at the wrong moment. Marcus eventually found a new sense of purpose in warning others. He started a blog about his experience, connecting with survivors from around the world. He spoke at seminars, wrote articles, and became a resource for people who were questioning their own involvement in high-pressure groups. Marcus's story became a lifeline for others, proof that you can escape, heal, and even thrive after a brush with darkness. Priya's escape left her with scars that took years to heal. The group's control had seeped into every part of her life, her routines, her beliefs, even her sense of right and wrong. For months after leaving, she jumped at every knock on the door, every unknown number on her phone. She struggled with nightmares, flashbacks, and the fear that Mother's followers would come looking for her. But Priya was determined not to let fear define her. She joined a support group for cult survivors, where she found comfort in the stories of others who had walked the same path. She learned that her doubts, her questions, and her desire for freedom were not weaknesses, but strengths. Over time, Priya rebuilt her life, reconnecting with her family, pursuing her passions, and learning to trust herself again. She now volunteers with organizations that help people escape high-control groups, using her experience to guide others to safety. What ties these stories together isn't just the terror of being recruited by a cult. It's the way survival changes you. It's the realization that anyone can be vulnerable, that the need for belonging is universal, and that the most dangerous traps are the ones that look like love. For Olivia, Marcus, and Priya, the danger didn't come from strangers or obvious villains. It came from people who promised to save them, to give them purpose, to make them feel special. The betrayal cut deep, but it also revealed a strength they never knew they had. But these stories are also about hope. Each of them found a way to move forward, to rebuild, and to help others who might be walking the same path. They learned that survival isn't just about escaping danger. It's about reclaiming your life, your confidence, and your sense of self. They became advocates, mentors, and friends to those who needed a reminder that it's possible to heal, even after the deepest wounds. If you're listening to these stories and thinking, that could never happen to me, remember that every person in these stories thought the same thing. They were careful, they trusted their instincts, but danger still found a way in. The most important lesson is to be aware, to trust your gut, and to remember that it's okay to walk away from a group or a person that doesn't feel right. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is protect yourself. And if you know someone who's been through something similar, listen to them. Believe their story, support their healing, and help them find their strength again. Survival isn't just about escaping the moment. It's about reclaiming your life, your confidence, and your sense of safety. As we come to the end of these stories, remember that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act in spite of it. Olivia, Marcus, and Priya are survivors, not just victims. Their stories are a testament to the power of instinct, the importance of community, and the strength that comes from facing your worst fears and coming out the other side. Thank you for joining me on this journey through 3 true stories of people who survived cult recruitment attempts. If you have a story of your own, a moment when you escaped a high-pressure group, or when you had to make the hard choice to walk away, share it in the comments. You never know who might need to hear it, who might find comfort in knowing they're not alone. Stay safe, trust your instincts, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that could happen to any of us.